Hello, this is Alex Bonilla. Before this podcast on Infinity Train, I wanted to express that we at Overly Animated, in light of recent events in the US as well as within the animation industry, wanted to give another boost to various resources supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as support for Black voices in animation. We have included relevant links in the podcast description that you can refer to with regard to that. This particular episode will also touch on these events at some point in relation to our discussion on Infinity Train. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We talk everything animation here, including Infinity Train Book 3, which we'll be talking about tonight. I'm your host, Alex Bonilla, and today I'm joined by Michelle Anderer.
Hello.
Maddie Potter.
Hello.
And April Collins.
Hi there.
Specifically, we are here for the third and final week as the final two episodes of Book 3 have released. We're going to be discussing the Origami Car and the new Apets, with obviously spoilers for the entire season. You can find a previous discussion of this show that we've had on this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/overlyanimated. And wherever you listen to us, we always appreciate any ratings and reviews you want to leave us. But yeah, we have two major episodes to discuss, and we'll be discussing the season overall now that we have the complete picture. A lot of stuff happening. So let's go to Maddie first as we go around the room for initial reactions. Maddie, you just watched the two episodes, I presume? How are you feeling?
I am feeling a lot of things, and none of them are good. I feel very... I just want to say that I finished episode 9, and I thought there wasn't a darker place we could go. Like, I didn't think that we'd actually go the route of episode 9 ended, and I legitimately thought we might just leave her there and move on to Simon in episode 10 and just never go back to her again this season. Like, just have her be in essentially a coma, because that was dark. But then it somehow got worse when they literally melted some guy's skin off in full view of the, camera. I thought there were, rules that they were going by for what they could show for, death in this show. Because they showed really brutal for the mirror guy, but he wasn't really human. He was we knew he was just liquid underneath there.
But this show is making us think, what's the real difference between them and humans?
Okay, thanks, Alex. Thank you so much. That was necessary. But apparently what we needed to see was Simon's eyeballs melting and then his skull being there.
Yeah.
Just like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah.
No, I don't disagree that it was like Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I'm here for it. I just didn't expect it. I wasn't expecting it to be on screen. What I think my reactions to this is, just these episodes, not the full season in general, is that we didn't go really in any directions I was expecting. No one got off, in a very, metaphysical sense, Simon got off the train, but, no one got off of the train through, the right method, quote unquote. Hazel was just gone. Hazel was gone 2 minutes into these episodes, and that was surprising, and we didn't see Amelia again. We actually did not see 1-1 this season at all. There was just a lot of surprising choices for me, in my opinion, but I also think there were a lot of plot hooks for future seasons, which was also surprising, but I guess, we could hold off on that specifically.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about what the future of this show is once we tackle what happened in these 22 minutes. Let's go to you, Michelle, next. What are your initial feelings about these episodes?
They made me very tired, but not because they were boring. They were really good in a lot of ways, and I definitely somehow I had the highest emotions for these out of any of them, I think, and that's saying something, because I really didn't see the culmination of episode 5 coming, and I assumed after that I would just like have this bar of expectation so that if something like that happened again, I'd be ready. But I wasn't ready for some of these twists. I agree with Maddie. Like, as a season in general, I didn't expect a lot of where this plot took us, and that was really, really nice because some things they seeded very well. But I think a lot of that was more in service of like character studies and, you know, their personal arcs versus like the plot of like where the story was going to take us. And I do think that was really well done. I'm like super conflicted on a couple things, and I don't know, it's probably going to be good to talk about it like with other people on the podcast because it was really hard to try to talk about it alone myself recording this morning. But I mean, I do think this was definitely the most complicated season that this crew has ever tried to do. And it's like such a hard subject matter. And I think like in a lot of ways they succeeded really well. And I like, in some ways I don't even envy them because like this looks so hard to pull off. But it's definitely not perfect. And I hope we can kind of get into some things that might not have landed the way they intended to. Because I have feelings about that also.
All right. April, how about you? Where are you at right now?
Okay. I have a lot of feelings and I have emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody else.
April, you're a human?
What? When did this happen?
I thought she was a turtle.
So did I.
Oh my God.
But I definitely did not see anything in these last two episodes like coming. It was very shocking, and I had a lot of like, you know how like you're so like shocked and you don't know what's happening that you sort of like clutch at your heart. I had that a lot, and not like voluntarily, like it just kind of happened. And like for certain things I was very like on edge, especially after the Origami Car. Like that was a lot to take in, and I'm really glad that we got, you know, sort of Grace's backstory and how, you know, her and Simon got to be together. So I'm glad that we sort of like resolved that in a sense, or at least answered that question. But man, I just did not like see this. Like I didn't see what happened to Simon coming. Like we didn't have Hazel in these last two episodes, essentially, which was very like surprising. And there was a lot of like twists and turns, and I can't say like I'm upset, but I'm like happy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because like it's like it was a lot to kind of pull off, and like Michelle said, it wasn't perfect, but like it was a lot to pull off, and I think they did it. And I think that I liked that the season didn't end in a way that I expected it to, because in the first book and the second book, you know, like it ended, people got off the train, and that was kind of it. And so I really enjoyed that, like, no one really got off the train. So, and it definitely leaves, and there's a lot left open, but again, like, I'm like, it gives me a lot to speculate and look forward to in a potential book 4.
Okay. Thank you all for sharing your conflicted feelings. I'll say I was in a very similar boat in terms of feeling tired by this in a way.
Yeah.
I'll say especially the first time I watched it was this morning when I woke up. And it's been a very rough 12 hours for me in terms of consuming the news and like being around like everything that's happening. So when I watched this, like I probably wasn't. Well, I mean, I probably wasn't in the right mindset, but at the same, like, the feeling that I got after finishing it was almost hollow. Like, man, like, what did I watch? Like, but like it's a similar feeling that I remember having after very tough BoJack Horseman episodes or after Undone. Like those kind of episodes that really dig into the human psyche in uncomfortable ways. Like this made it dug into those similar feelings. So now I rewatched more recently, like after work and like a bit of distance, and I can appreciate more like the positive notes that you get, especially out of Grace's character. But the first time watching it was very difficult because of all the things that happened. I'm interested that a couple of you said that it ended in a way that was unexpected, because I do feel like in previous podcasts we've discussed a lot of possibility in terms of what actually happened, like especially with regards to Simon. I think we had already discussed this possibility. So like I feel that the story went the way that it was heading. But
I mean, that's true in retrospect.
I think that we predicted where it was going, but I don't know if, like maybe where the story's going doesn't mean you think that they'll actually do it, because this is a very wild ending. Yeah, even if the characters were leading in this spot. Sorry, Michelle.
Oh, no, it's okay. I mean, I feel like we had a lot of discussion last podcast about, like, it seemed very unlikely to us that Simon was going to straight up die just because, it just seemed like, like they'd gone to such extenuating lengths to make him sympathetic that I think we all assumed that was leading to some kind of payoff of him taking at least the first step, the way Grace has been taking a lot of steps in the direction they needed to be going, but he just ended up doubling down, and I think based on that,
he did a lot more than double down.
You know what I mean? Though, like after we saw what happened after his heart was broken, like it would have gone one of two ways, and I feel like if we go this way, it makes sense that he would straight up just die. But we didn't know that was for sure how he was going to react, even though we could infer it based on other evidence before in the show.
Okay, and I think the biggest shock comes from like they actually like did it more than because like I guess it's kind of like fun in games to sort of speculate that Simon would die or any character really.
It's fun,
you know what I mean? But, games, but really though, and then for it to actually like happen and you to see it and like in the way that it played out is totally different, and it is very shocking to kind of see that, because, and I think it comes with like the like some of my like mixed feelings were that I'm glad I don't have to deal with Simon anymore, but I'm also still kind of sad that he's gone kind of thing, because
he didn't get a chance to like change.
Yeah, like he didn't get a chance at redemption, and so I guess like that potential is gone, and so you're sad about that, but then like it's very confusing.
I'll concede that the execution was perhaps a little more unexpected than you'd appreciate. There's a lot to get to with Simon, but I feel like it's better if we start with Grace first. Like, get her story in here, because at the end of the day, like a lot of the first 8 episodes, I think we talked about, like, it was focusing more on giving Simon the backstory. Episodes 9 and 10 finally, like, get around to Grace. Especially episode 9, like, where we get the whole, like, going through your memory tape that we got for Tulip and for Jesse. So, like, Grace finally gets that. And episode 10, like, we see her finally coming to terms with what she's learning from the train. Like, she, like, literally, like, says out loud, like, the lessons that she's supposed to learn. So, what are we feeling about like, how Grace was treated on the whole this season? Maddie, I don't know if you want to go first here.
I mean, I'd like to talk about it. I don't really, I think that Grace is just so interesting because she has a similar thing to Jessie in that she wants to be in a group, and that's very clear. She wants to be included. She wants to be with people, and that's really well shown in the way she reacts to all these girls that are. It's not 100% clear to us, the audience, if they're laughing at her, but to her, she's very sure they are laughing at her, and that's what really matters. That she is sure that in that moment they are sitting at the table talking about her, laughing about her. And that continues all through like her stuff. That's why she made the Apex. That's why she keeps doing things to make Simon like her. Like, because that's what she cares about. She cares about these people still liking her despite everything. And I find it really interesting that we get to the end, and that hasn't really changed. She's just accepted that she's doing it. She isn't, unlike Tulip and Jesse and Lake, we're not at this point where she's ready to be, like, she's not fully, quote-unquote, reformed. I don't know what words you want to use for the train that, like, she hasn't fully learned this lesson, but she has realized that this is the lesson she's here to learn. And I think that's really important. And I think that's really interesting the way they're showing this. I know with Michelle here, we're going to get into whether the train is good or not. And I'm kind of
you might not.
Oh, we might not. Okay. I'm sidestepping whether this is okay or not. I'm just saying, like, this is what's happening with Grace. And I really love the way we saw it, because we saw her memories, and then we saw her own commentary on her memories through the voice of the other characters. And that is so interesting. And it's such an interesting technique. And I don't know what else to say about that besides it being really cool.
Yeah, we can focus on Grace as a character before we go into the maker with the train system. But like Michelle, specifically on Grace, how do you feel about where she ends up here?
I was super relieved that we focused so much on Grace for the last 2 episodes, because I was getting a little concerned that we were spending, that the plot was spending so much time on Simon and like the cat and just like all of his baggage, because like for the first few episodes we really are more aligned with Grace and we see more of what she's thinking and how she's relating to Hazel, and Simon was more in the background. So I'm glad that we closed out with her. It does seem to, like, we are supposed to like be way more on Grace's side than Simon. And while I guess you can make the argument that they're co-leads of the season, I feel like, you know, Grace is the one who survived this. This really is kind of her season. She's, in my opinion, more the main character just based on how this all shook out. But yeah, I'm really glad we finally got her backstory. It fleshes out a lot of the things that we'd kind of seen in practice, but with way more needed context. I love that she was like just vocally confronting her own worst fears. And I love that she, you know, she's a strong enough person that she was able to kind of get through that in not a lot of time and like get herself out of her memory trap the way Tulip did. And that's not easy to do. And the cat even warned Simon about that. And we'd seen Tulip deal with that in the first book. So it says a lot to her character that she could get through that. And I just like, I remember when I was watching this, I kept screaming like, well, Amelia, come back. You're the most powerful person we've seen who's not directly a train or Wan. And like, your belt can solve everyone's problems. I just kept screaming for Amelia to come back and like help. And she never came. And instead, like, Grace just constantly stepped up for herself. And I actually think that's a really good decision. And even at the end when like, her and Simon are fighting on the bridge and like she's like barely holding on, and I'm just like, I don't know how, like there's like a Gome on top of her, like how is anything gonna work out? And she like has this clever way of like kicking Simon's leg, getting his boot off, throwing it at the Gome, and then just like pulling herself back up. It's just like she's had to look out for herself for so long, and she's very good at it, and it saved her life more than once. And I do think that's like a very strong positive quality that Grace has, and I'm really glad that was showcased so much. I mean, I really like Grace. Honestly, I kind of like honestly wish we'd focused even more on Grace. But I get that it's like they're trying to nuance everyone, and it's complicated, but like I think there's like so much more to Grace we don't even know, and I really just want to see more of it now.
Yeah, and I did find it interesting. You called her like that, like they're co-leads, but that she's more of the main, which I find interesting because at least in my watching experience, it's like, man, I wish there was more Grace. Like I wish that it did focus on her more, and I didn't feel that. So that's why like it's kind of hard to like to say that she's like the actual main character when they're splitting up the focus so much in here. April, I don't know how where are you at with how the show treated Grace this season?
I mean, I definitely agree that she should have gotten more time this season, especially if because in the end she does she is the lead at the end of the season, and so I guess in the beginning it was really interesting that her time was sort of split between her and Simon, but even looking back and just kind of thinking about it, we did kind of focus in on Grace a little bit more than Simon, and Simon did have his moments and things like that, but I do wish that we would have spent more time with Grace, and I love that we are able to see her growth just from episode, not even from episode 1 of this season, but from book 2, whenever she was sort of first introduced. And then because I remember at the beginning of this, we were all how are we going to have a book where we're not on the best terms with the leads. And so just my affection and adoration towards her has grown from, the very beginning, and we got to, watch her progress. And even though she's not off the train, Lake and Jesse and Tulip were at the end of their season, she's definitely made great strides, and her, standing up for herself and confronting Simon in front of the Apex is a lot, especially because Grace has been very much a people pleaser for the kids.
Yeah.
And so, just kind of go against them and speak out. And whenever she wiped off the lipstick off her face or whatever, I thought that was just a really incredible moment, even though it was such a small act. So, but I'm satisfied with, the progress that she's made and where we've ended with her. I really hope we get more of her, because I want more of her. She's a very unique and interesting character, and I've really enjoyed, going down the train with her, or whatever.
going down the train. But I mean, and unlike other characters that we've been with, we actually have the chance to see her again. She does not necessarily need to be gone forever.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason why I'm satisfied with the ending of this book, is because there is the potential that we'll get to see Grace again, especially if in book 4 we follow Hazel or something that. I think that would definitely be something that has a lot of potential and could definitely happen.
Oh, that reunion is gonna hurt.
It's gonna hurt, but it's
a lot of things are gonna hurt.
Look, we're already hurting
for you.
Yeah, I was gonna because a couple of you have alluded to the fact that she's not off the train at the end of this season, but she's definitely on her way there, right?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. She's on her way.
Oh yeah, she's made some crazy strides in her number, because it was almost all the way up her arm, and now it's her mid forearm now, if that.
I believe it gets to triple digits, which is a lot.
They sort of alluded to that, which is, that's awesome. I love that. So
it kind of left to see suspense on where exactly her number ends up, but it shows that she's improving, and that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We can dig a little bit into her backstory, since that's such a big piece of the Origami Car. We get. I believe that parents is a theme that the Infinity Train pinpoints. Similar stuff to Tulip, where she feels a bit neglected by her parents, and anything in particular that stood out to you guys from this look back in Grace's story, and how that affects her character.
I thought it was really interesting that we had the scene in the ice cream shop where, you know, we don't know that the girls at that table were necessarily, you know, talking about her or making fun of her or in any way. But then, you know, she's sort of like, it's very like within her character as we know her, for her to like go up to him and be like, oh, like, you're right. She shouldn't smile until she gets her braces off.
It was so mean.
It's so
but
brutal.
It was so mean and brutal. But like, at the same time, I was just like, well, that's Grace. Like,
Yeah.
here she is. So, but like, it definitely sort of like cut deep whenever she was like, I just wanted to be noticed. So and her parents suck.
Her parents are those, like, I guess, like, hashtag classic rich parents who are just, like, too busy with, like, growing their wealth and being business people that they don't have time for her. And I know, Alex, you mentioned in the doc outline that's like, oh, it seems like the mom can't even remember, like, the maid's name. But I think the implication is maybe she goes through so many, she just, like, can't even keep track of them anymore. Like, they cycle through so many. Yeah, and it's like, she always, like, has them watch over Grace instead of being there with her daughter herself. And so it's just this extra barrier that Grace has from her family. Like, she doesn't really get to spend time with them. And that further isolates her, on top of the fact that she said they make all of her lessons private because that's the fancy person thing to do. But also that just leaves her feeling even more alone.
Yeah.
I think that the way I read it was not the mom forgot. It was supposed to be like, this happens a lot. This is happening over and over and over again. There are events, they're embarrassed by Grace, and then they send her off with whichever nanny is there that day, that week, that whatever. And it really, and then they spoke back in every voice of every nanny she's ever had. Like, that was really sad.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't surprise me also if her parents like constantly replaced the nannies.
That's
as
what
well.
I mean. Yeah, they replace them constantly, so it's like you don't even get attached to one of them because they're always a new person later.
Yeah, and it's also interesting too that like Grace is never really like, I guess, a bad, like she's not really ever a bad kid whenever we do see her in our flashbacks. I mean, like, she's playing with her mother's makeup. Okay, that's fine. You know, that's not a big deal. Like, she makes a mean comment to another girl. Okay, that's I guess normal.
It's normal, yeah.
Yeah, but then like for her to like actually like steal a bracelet, and then whenever her dad is like, well, she wouldn't do that. She has no reason, and it's like, how do you? Yeah, like, you don't know.
You don't even know your kid. How do you know what she feels? That's the problem. That's why she did this. It was a cry for help, for attention.
Well, I found it an interesting detail that we make Grace come from a family of privilege, where like she could do these things and not receive any like she had on the one hand feels stifled by the family atmosphere, but at the same time, like, she is able to be bailed out because the parents have influence. So like it's a weird seesaw going on in her life.
I think it's really interesting the way they do that.
Well, I think it's interesting too that Grace sort of blames a bit of her loneliness on the fact that her family is well off, but like, I 100% related to Grace during all of these moments. I was like, oh, look, there's my childhood happening.
Oh, God.
Maybe my parents were, you know, meeting with fancy pants people, but like, you know, it can happen, you know, to families of all backgrounds. So I think it was that's another reason why like I have such an adoration for Grace, is because, you know, I was able to relate to her. So
yeah, I think they go to a really good length, and I think this is probably true for most of the main characters in Infinity Train, to make them super relatable, even if their situation is arguably pretty specific, which is impressive, and I do think they're very good at it.
Oh, they're really good at it, because I can't say, like, I feel like I can relate to all of the like leads that we've had in every season. And so just like being able to connect with another person, even though like they're like, Tulip is not Lake. Lake is not Jesse. Jesse is not Grace. Like, none of them are the same in any way, shape, or form. And so I think that's just really, like, masterful, like, character writing.
Yeah. They all have through lines where you can see where they're different people, but you can also see where they've had to make decisions in situations that are very similar.
Yeah, because they're all on the train. I mean, they got that in common.
So that episode keeps going on. It touches on how Grace meets Simon, and we'll talk about that when we get to Simon. But the new Apex, it begins with Grace going back inwards as she's like fighting to get out of that tape situation, and we go through her more recent regrets, including this amazing giant hazels all over surrounding her. The hazels are really brutal in this segment. The key line, a coward leading cowards, just repeated by a tiny girl voice, was kind of, it scared me a little bit. But like, in the process, she like spells out like, what's going on with her. She's like, I was wrong, afraid of being wrong and disappointing others, and I just wanted to avoid being alone, and that happened anyway. So like, she says these things out loud, and she comes to after coming to this revelation. I feel like Infinity Train has done this in previous seasons, where like they need the main character to like spell out that they've learned their lesson. I'm not sure, at least to me, it's not that great. But like, I don't know how you guys took this whole opening to that episode.
I like it. I think
sorry.
I like it because in the moment, it's usually a very high emotional situation when you're watching it fresh. And even if you have the courtesy of having time between episodes to theorize, and you can put the pieces together, even if they don't spell it out for you, I feel like I always appreciate knowing exactly what the character thinks their situation is, because me making assumptions isn't always going to align perfectly with what they actually think is happening to them. So I like the clarification, even if it's very obviously done. I don't think it's a bad thing. For me, it doesn't really break my immersion, but I definitely see how that could be like a little frustrating if you feel very confident in knowing like where it's going, especially for Grace, because it'd been a minute since we'd spent time with her, and it took till the last 2 episodes to really dive into her stuff. I feel like I didn't have a lot of assumptions going in with her at all. I really wanted to learn more. So for me, it was really nice to finally get that in her own words.
Maddie, you were going to comment?
I just think that even if we were even if it is the same trope of like telling us, I don't know if it's necessary to tell us exactly what's going on, like what like the character is solving about themselves, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I really appreciate, especially when it's done in an interesting way. I don't think that I don't think there's a point in like saying that's not good, because I really appreciate this, especially when we did it in a very interesting way. Mm-hmm. It was just, I don't know, just the memories and the exact way we saw her deal with them and the way we presented it, even if we could have expected exactly like, even if it's kind of like, I'm sorry, the word is escaping me, even if this is very tropey and very normal for this series to do it this way, that's more its strength, I think, than its downfall, because we know what we're getting here, and I just think it works. I think that's just the base of it. I just think this really works really well, this entire beginning of this episode.
Mm-hmm. And Michelle makes a point that, like, again, this could be a symptom of the show needing to spread its focus around and not just on Grace, that it had been a minute since we really talked.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a good summary of things for you as everything is happening this season.
And it's good to be able to align yourself with the character as well. Mm-hmm. So you're not so you know what's going through their head versus having to guess and assume, because then it like their actions make more sense. So instead of like sitting here being frustrated because Grace did this and I don't know why, I can say, like, I can already make the connection as to why Grace did what she did in whatever scenario, and then be like, okay, that makes sense why she did it, you know, versus like just me being incredibly like frustrated and driving myself insane. Like, Grace, why are you doing things? I don't understand.
Grace, why?
She's like, hang on, I'll tell you straight out. Like this.
Yeah. So, and I think that it doesn't like take away from the story to like that much, just because then like you can actually focus on the story versus like trying to figure out like the character's motivation and then how they're going to get there. Like they're very just like upfront about it, and I think that's really nice, because nothing drives me more crazy than whenever I'm sitting here and trying to guess like why a character is doing what they're doing, and then like 3 episodes later I finally find out. I mean, granted, we didn't find out until the end of the season, but still, like, as we move forward with Grace, potentially we know.
Okay. Thank you guys for sharing your perspective on that. I think now is the time when we can begin shifting our focus over to Simon. Especially given that, like, after Grace goes through all that is when she confronts Simon in his new role. And the full antagonist turn completes in these 2 episodes. We got a lot of Simon highlights. Just in general, these episodes, one thing they do have are the visuals are great, and they also just have really like distressing shots. One of which is making Grace stuck in that memory loop, and she's like a zombie, and Simon just like pushes her over, and like the disgusted grin that he has when he's doing that is just so.
It's very gross. It's very gross on a lot of levels.
Yes.
Yeah. And in general, Simon is being very gross in these episodes. We get a lot of symptoms of abusive even in these episodes. We've talked in previous podcasts about the focus that was being given to Simon's backstory in especially in the cat episodes, and we get a little bit more in the Origami Car too. We actually like see him getting abandoned and all. But now that we know how this ends, which is with Simon like getting into maniacal rage and dying of Gome, how do we feel?
Dying of Gome.
Dying of Gome. Gome sounds like a disease.
Yeah, I diagnosed you with Gome. There's no cure.
Yeah. He died of Gome? Oh, he was melted? They're not the same.
I can't believe the Gomes also like explode after they do this, because that's all they try to do and it kills them. So what kind of system is that? Is it a self-suicide? Like, why do they, like, if they know it's like bees, right? Like bees, if they sting you and they lose their stinger, then they die. Whereas like hornets can sting you forever and regrow stingers, and that just sucks. That's not fair. And they don't make honey.
I have stuff to say about the Gome, but I think that it's mostly speculation and mostly about whether there's a future season, because the way this Gome did this, it seemed like it was intentional.
Like it wanted to die.
It seemed like it was fulfilling a purpose, and it feels like they have a purpose here on the train that we don't know yet. I was almost expecting it to explode and for there to be Simon inside of it, like a younger Simon all over again.
We can talk a little bit about train lore when we a little bit later, but focusing on Simon and his death here. How do we feel about all the backstory that we're given to, like, you know, sympathize where he's coming from and why he gets this way, and given how it ends? Michelle, I don't know if you want to start us off on how we deal with his story.
That's a really dangerous question. So one thing I've been holding on to since April's initial thoughts was, April, you were saying that you felt like Simon didn't have... The sad thing about seeing Simon die in the show is that he didn't have the chance to change. I personally feel like what's sad is not that he didn't have the chance, is that he had the chance all along. It sucks that he never took it. Because if we're real, like, he and Grace have had plenty of time to change their mind, and Grace actually completely did change her mind, and they were at that point experiencing pretty similar things. Like, they met Hazel and Tuba at the same time. They shared the same journey with them. They left, both those characters left them at the same time. So I think it really is just like, it sucks that Simon was so unwilling at every turn to change his mind about anything, and instead just double down on, like, I don't agree with this is wrong. You don't agree with me, then you're wrong. And now you're the problem. And just pushing everything away that didn't suit how he wanted to look at the world, because he was more interested in protecting himself than healing himself. And I think, like, if there's a tragedy there, that's it. But I don't know. It's so hard to talk about Simon right now. I think someone else should go for a little bit.
I think that Simon, the saddest part about Simon is that I get how I get it. I get how he got to this point. And he's just, he went through trauma. He never really grew from it. And you can't really blame someone for the trauma, but we can say that he could have been a lot better. He could have changed, and he had that chance, to change from trauma. But having seen what happened to him, having seen how it affected him, and seeing how Grace came into his life right when the cat left his life, it was instantaneous. It's just, you get how it happened. And I think that's the most depressing part, that you see it, that it's not surprising to you after you see it, that it's like, yeah, I get it. This is how Simon went down this path, and there's no fixing it. There's no undo button that undoes the trauma he has. It's just a matter of whether he's ready to change, and he just never is during the season. Oh my God, I have a lot of feelings about.
Alex, what do you think about Simon? I'm sure you have thoughts.
Tell us your thoughts on Simon.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we shouldn't compare trauma. Everyone
never
is different, right? But I do think that the show, especially with Origami Car, tries to place that, like, Grace is coming from a similar place of not wanting to be alone, not wanting to be abandoned once she finds someone. So it's interesting that we see, like, the two divergences of one person, like, it is open to other relationships, in this case Grace with Hazel, and that opens her up to a new viewpoint, whereas we see Simon is comfortable with the one relationship and desperately doesn't want that to go away, and because of that closes himself off to any new knowledge, in this case, like, empathy for Hazel and changing his viewpoint. So, like, we see, like, the two reactions, and just them going totally off in different directions. It's difficult because you see it becomes so malicious in the last episode, to the point where, like, like that moment where Grace still helps Simon up, and Simon is, for like a brief second, it's like, why did you do that? And then immediately goes back to, no, I this isn't wrong. I shouldn't be doing this anymore, and pushes her off. So, like, it's just it's a place where, like, there's, like, really no defending that, and, like, what it comes back to a more general feeling of like, how to deal with, like, all these stories of, like, you watch someone slowly lose themselves to committing more evil actions, and, like, you understand why they do it, but, like, at the same time, like, they're hurting people that that are trying to make changes. So it's like, how am I supposed to feel about you when the show has spent time, like, telling me why they got there? And, like, that's the eternal struggle with shows like this, and that's what makes this difficult to at least difficult for me to figure out, because, like, it definitely felt and, like, also contributing to that is he dies, like, just like there's an ending there, and it's just like, well, I mean, in previous shows I feel like that's been discussed as, like, that's, like, the easy way out. You just kill the character once they've done the most evil most evil thing. But because like we've seen like the whole thing from them being close friends and slowly losing the relationship to the end, it's like it does feel like a complete story, but it still feels like it feels weird that like that's just it, you know.
I have thoughts about that. I feel like, and a lot of what I was thinking over the week was like, okay, I'll just do it. I did it once today. I'll do it again. So like, I don't know if all of us read like Sarah's thoughts in the Infinity Train thread on our Discord. I know Alex, you probably did. Maddie and April,
I
don't know
if you did too. I kind of try to avoid the Discord threads before the podcast.
I will summarize. So when we were all super, like, you know, we were kind of jazzed after the last episode drops. Last Thursday, we all, like, as we do, we get on our Discord and we, like, talk about, like, oh, man, this is so crazy. And a lot of our commentary was about Simon, obviously, because, like, and I think, like, this is something that's, I don't know, it's hard to talk about in terms of, like, how much credit do you give a show team versus just how it comes off. But because at that point, Simon was just, like, the one doing the most terrible things. He was the character in everyone's mind, not necessarily Grace or Hazel or anyone else who was probably like, you know, someone we should be rooting for. So we were really getting this time being like, oh, this is so sad. His backstory is so tragic. Like, what do we do with this kid? And Sarah came and she's kind of like, yeah, I see all this, but also like, it's making me super uncomfortable because this delving into this sort of character, especially like when they're a white guy, like feels very reminiscent of like how media coverage handles like school shooters and like serial murder. Like it's true though, right? Like the majority of those people are people like Simon, and somehow it's like all tilted to like, oh, it's just them as an individual, and like what in their childhood could have prompted them to be this kind of terrible person, and like what was the state of their mind. And in a way, it's kind of fascinating that they were able to commit all these crimes. And like, you know, like that's really what true crime podcasts feel like a lot of times. In a way, it's just this creepy kind of like digging into the mind of someone that is given a little too much focus and a little too much humanity, I think, frankly, for the juxtaposition of that versus like the atrocities they commit. And I was like thinking about that based off of Sarah's thought, and it stuck with me all week, and it honestly forever just changed my perspective of Simon, because I could never go back to just seeing him the way the show intends. And I tried really hard to like talk about this in my video. I still haven't edited that part, so I don't know how it's going to go. I am a little terrified of the comment section, but like essentially I think like what's happened here is there's like two Simons. There's like the Simon that exists in the confines of the show that the crew made and had like, you know, lots of nuanced conversations about, I'm sure. And they did a lot of things that made sense. Like they made him the straight up villain. Like they made Grace the one we're supposed to empathize with, the one we're supposed to be on the side of. And that's all like really good intention. But I do think like there's such a balance you have to strike between giving everyone nuance, because that's like something you're known for doing in your show, and being mindful of like the real life ramifications of how this comes off in the greater scheme of just like, you know, reality. And I think like on a personal show level, Simon is like a masterclass of making a very nuanced, difficult character that you are able to very easily put yourself in the mind of and empathize with extremely, while also being able to like divorce that from the decisions he's making and objectively still dislike him for committing these crimes. But I think like it just, based on the world we live in, like how he looks in the context of real people that do a lot of the things he do, I think it was probably a mistake to spend so much time on the humanizing aspects of him in this show. And by that, I mean, like, I don't mean they should like take it all away. I just think like, you know, did we need that second part of Simon going back to the cat again for that extra kind of just like hitting home, like, well, explain yourself to me. Why did you leave me? And you owe me something. Because that does ultimately make him seem a little more sympathetic. And maybe that time would have been better spent with like Hazel and fleshing out her state of mind. Like she got the funeral moment with Grace. That was really great. But there could have been a lot more. I was thinking, like, half the times we see Hazel and Grace bond, like, the first half are fun. The second half, they're either traumatized by Tuba dying, which is, you know, in relation to what Simon did, or they're in that cave and they're also grieving and kind of in fear of Simon. Like, and that just reads really different in the context of real life than it does in the vacuum of the show. And I don't know. It's not like I have super good solutions to this. Like, it is such a gamble, and I do really admire and appreciate that they were willing to even take this subject matter on. But I do think because this show is so short, they cannot accomplish this the way something like BoJack can. And I think, like, BoJack is the only show in recent memory I've seen handle this kind of difficult, negative character in a way that comes off really, like you feel a closure at the end, because, like, he reaches a punishment that is entirely of his own doing, but he has to kind of live through it, and that's somehow, in a way, the ultimate punishment, you know? But they had, like, 6 seasons with him. They had 10 episodes with Simon, so I feel like the solution for them was to kill him, because he's gone too far, and it probably made the most sense to just get rid of him so he couldn't hurt anyone else. But that also, I'm afraid, kind of makes him a little bit of a martyr. And I'll just say, like, and I did talk about this a little in the review video, but, like, I was just, like, thinking about, like, you know, even the fan discourse for social media, a lot of it was just, like, you know, everyone was talking about Simon and drawing fan art of Simon looking, like, really sad and tortured. And yeah, he is sad and tortured. But again, I feel like it's so easy for us to give someone like Simon, like, our time in humanity, where I don't think it's best spent when people like Simon are the ones committing most of the crimes in our country and getting away with it. You know, and that's just, I'm not putting that on the crew. That's not their fault, but
it's hard to not see that connection.
Once you see the connection, it's so hard not to have that color your experience. And because of that, I was, like, really broken up at certain moments watching these, because it was just like, I can see them trying to have, like, this complicated, nuanced character and have us be so conflicted. But by the end, I wasn't conflicted. And I no longer wanted to have empathy for him, because, like, that empathy is so little given to so many other people who deserve it so much more than I think Simon really does in terms of what he represents with real people, you know? So that's my piece. I'm done now. I'm so tired, but I feel like it needs to be said.
Thank you for expressing all of that.
I think this also suffers from the fact that there's some stuff happening at this moment. Like, we recorded this on August 27th. I'm sure you can, if this is in the future, you can figure out what happened. August 27th, 2020.
Yeah,
figure out what was happening.
Yeah.
But,
I was going to... Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, April.
I was going to say, like, I definitely see that connection now. And I guess, like, I 100% agree, but in a way to sort of defend, I guess, like, my conflicted feelings is because the show did try and make him empathetic, but I much would have rather, in the end, having seen where we go with Simon's character, I, again, would have, much rather that time for his development to be gone towards Hazel or Grace or anybody else, honestly, because there was, like, whenever I saw, like, whenever he pushes her over and he's in her mind and he's sort of he's gaslighting her a little bit, and then he's also manipulating her own memories, and she calls him out for that too, because she's just like, just because, like, my memory, like you don't like it doesn't make it not real. And so I think that's also something to be said, the fact that he's willing to go as far as, you know, manipulating and changing the memories of another person just to suit his needs and his wants, and then going back and I don't want to say, like, brainwashing, but it was very easy to convince probably the kids to turn against Grace like that. And, like, even at that moment, I was just like, oh no, like, and he was like, let's wheel her, and I was like, oh no, like, I lost, like, feelings for him. And again, like, he did have empathetic moments, which is true, But again, like the show didn't really have a choice but to kill him off because he was so far gone at the end of it. And, you know, it's really unfortunate. And I would it's hard now seeing it in this light, given like the world that we are living in today. Like, maybe it would be better received if we weren't in the time that we are in, but that's still no excuse to dismiss it either. Because I think, like you mentioned, like true crime podcasts and things like that, and I for one do not like those at all, because I don't like, or I don't like, I just don't.
It glorifies things that we shouldn't glorify.
No, it definitely does. It glorifies like terrible people who have done horrific things. And so, like, I think that by making him empathetic, you're doing that. Like, you're glorifying his like terrible actions. And whenever like I'm thinking about just any villain in any other like movie, TV show, or whatever, I think about how like we only ever really make the villain empathetic if like at some point there's going to be a redemption for them. And I'm sure there's examples, and you're welcome to like yell them at me or whatever, but
gently place them in the comments.
Yeah, gently place them in the comments. I'll maybe read them, but just
that's
just
right.
Like,
time is precious, April.
Time is precious. But just thinking about it, like, you know, I can't really remember a villain that I felt some empathy towards that didn't at some point get a type of redemption. I mean, the first one that I'm kind of thinking of right now is like She-Ra, for instance. Like, that's the first one that popped into my head, because even the villains of that show eventually found their redemptions. But we did also spend time to feel empathetic towards them.
I can have a couple
crime. He was the only one who was
beside the point.
Really not nuanced.
Yeah, but again, like Lord Prime, like we didn't spend any time like fleshing him out, really. So that's kind of like the example that sits in my head right now as I'm thinking about this. So I think that the time that we spent on Simon was very much wasted now.
It's a balance, right? Like, I do think some of worth having is just like, how do you find the line between having just enough to give us a sense of him without it feeling like it's prioritizing him as a person over other people who are doing much better things than him.
Yeah,
you know,
and
that's how I
think the other way to kind of think of it too is that in order to better understand Grace, maybe we had to understand that part of Simon. Yeah. Just because that it sort of really does like help, I guess, flesh out their relationship and how they came together and how they sort of came to be, you know? So, I mean, I think it was very admirable of the crew to do
I've had a little time to put together my thoughts. It took a second.
Okay, I love it. Yeah.
And I'm kind of going to I'm not going to, devil's advocate, such a dirty word.
It's such a dirty word. Don't use it, Maddie.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. What I was going to say is that
provide an alternate way of thinking.
I'm going to defend the show a little bit in that I think that their depiction of Simon is not supposed to be sympathetic at the end.
I get that, Maddie, and that's like the crux of my thing. It's like, this was not something they intended, but this is how it comes off, just based on like the fact that the show doesn't exist in a vacuum. And that's what hurts so much to think about, that they tried so hard to find this balance, and it still kind of doesn't feel like it was quite enough, and that it's not their fault. It's just so unfortunate, you know, because I want to root for this, and they've done so many amazing things, and like I've never felt so like hurt to give criticism, but like I do think, like, just based on like how the fan community has reacted to Simon and just like the time and place that we are watching this show, I don't think it was as successful as.
Can I say what I want to say before you like?
Yeah, no, for sure.
To go against it. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Oh. I'm sorry. Go for it.
I'm not trying to cut you off. You seem to be going against what I'm saying before I get a chance to say it. No, in that, he is. I think that I was misinterpreting the feelings that I had for Simon, and I really appreciate what you said, Michelle, because it helped me recontextualize exactly what I was feeling. And that, like, I felt this sadness watching the end of Simon and watching his death and watching his full downfall. And it was a lot of what you said, where it was kind of, we're used to this story, and it's kind of not helpful to sympathize with these people in a lot of ways. But I think the reason I felt sad, the reason that I felt these things is in the end because I'm sad because it's real. I'm sad because it's how it is. This person does die in real life. This like this. And I'm not saying that's a tragedy. I'm saying that this is just how it is. This person tries to kill somebody, tries to kill a lot of people, and then they're just dead, and there's no closure. There's no ending here. This is just it. There's nothing after this to finish with Simon. The show did a lot of work not to make a martyr of him, but then it feels story-wise like we've left this gaping hole there, because that's how it is in real life. It's just this awful, empty feeling because he's dead. There's nothing he can do to repay for what he's done, but he's already killed a lot of people. Tuba's not back now that he's dead. And on top of that, I think the whole season, showed that Simon was living in that world of privilege the whole time, just from the way he was fighting for things. Grace was always in this position of, and I'm going to say this as I'm a white person, one of the whitest people I know. So I'm going to say this with like a lot of like, we're talking about this on the podcast, so I need to make a comment on it, but I'm being very careful with my words, is what I'm saying. So I'm sorry. Is that Grace is constantly in a position where she wants more. She feels like she doesn't have what she realizes that she can lose what she has at any moment. And Simon, on the other hand, the second he loses a single thing, his whole world crumbles. It's a very different reaction to loss. It's a very different reaction to betrayal. Grace, when she loses something, she almost feels like she's expecting it. It seems like she's ready for it to happen before it happens. And it goes into just how white people act inherently. Like, I am used to getting things certain ways based on my skin and based on the way things are in my life. And that's not good, but it is just how I am, and I can't change that because that's how I grew up and that's the environment I'm in. And Simon is doing that same thing where he expects it. He needs it from people. He needs them to serve him in a certain way. And when they don't fit his narrative, when they don't fit the things he thinks he deserves, he just has to end it all. He needs to like just burn it to the ground and start over. And it is in this trauma with him, and that's not like fake. That is a trauma he lived, but his reaction to the trauma is really, really rooted in this racial stuff we started to comment on in this season.
Yeah, and I would also mention, you guys have been alluding to this. The timing of this all is in an interesting place where well, let's say, like, there's national outrage over the shooting of Jacob Blake as part of many months now of seeing the narrative of a white police officers shooting unarmed black men. So you have all that going on. Recently, as well, within the animation industry, we had an incident with She-Ra showrunner Noelle Stevenson revealing that there was an inside joke that was based in racially insensitive stereotypes. And that also brings up that was an all-white crew. Yeah. Similarly, with Infinity Train, the writing staff is all white. They did have Jeff Trammell as a consultant for this season, perhaps contributing to this not feeling as overtly as maybe it could have gone. You know, like there's totally a worst case scenario that we didn't get to here. Yeah. But just it's something to consider, right, within the animation industry that because of the fact that white narrative dominates the writing process, you get sometimes you get situations like this where you have the fragile white male getting a lot more attention than the black female character. So we've talked earlier in this podcast about like they are co-leads, but at the same time there was the feeling that the middle episodes focused a lot more on Simon, and we stacked Grace stuff in episode 9. So just that is extra context that we have going on in all of this too.
But I think that fits it because like that's what these like delicate white men do. They force themselves into the leading role. They force themselves into this place, and that's almost what Simon did mid-season. He made his problem the focus because he had a problem, and that had to be what we dealt with, no matter what else was going on. And that felt, and I don't know if they, and I'm saying this, I don't know if they got this across well enough. I think this is what they were going for on some level, but I don't know if it worked. I don't know if we got there because, again, I do feel a little too sympathetic for him in a way that kind of makes me uncomfortable.
That's like kind of how I feel once I really looked at this from a different angle. The sadness for me came, like you were saying, Matt, it's like I can't say for sure what their intentions are. I can look at our discussions we've had on, how nuanced he is and how much time they spent fleshing it out, and how that like puts us in this like, in the context of the show, a fun place to feel like all kinds of ways about him and acknowledge like conflicting feelings of empathy and just like revulsion. But I think, despite like whatever the goal was, I feel like how it's come across, and again, just like how I've just seen people talk about Simon, it really feels like maybe it was a little too much time. Because it is maybe a little too easy to care about how he feels, and that's not like an accident.
No, and it feels like they should have had more than Jeff Trammell on the team, because this feels like you should acknowledge kind of the fear. Like they acknowledged the fear and grace in one episode, really, and I think that they should have acknowledged that. I think that someone like Grace in this situation would start being afraid a lot sooner than she did.
Yeah, I wonder, I
will give, I guess, Grace a little bit of credit, because I think that, because she lied to Simon out of a fear for Hazel.
Yeah.
Which means that she did.
Lie.
Yeah. And so she did demonstrate, a little bit of fear of Simon earlier on. I mean, it wasn't like immediately, but it was still like early enough on that I want to at least give her credit for that.
I mean, I'm not saying her reactions are not valid or anything. Like, I think I give her credit for everything she does this season. Like, she's incredible. I'm just saying that they could have done better to frame it for the audience, to show that like Grace's fear is not just because Simon is being awful. There's a lot of other things that are happening here under the surface that we're just not talking about, even though we kind of touched on the null thing.
Yeah, I will say, like, one thing I really liked about Grace that I did see, like, in myself is just, like, she cares so much about everyone, like, being on the same page and, like, like managing people and, like, having everyone like her, but also, like, making sure nothing gets, like, too off the rails, and that does feel like a little more, like, to me personally, feels like a very, like, female kind of thing, to just, like, want to, like, make sure everyone's okay, and to be, like, to somehow make it your job to, like, care about, like, to do that emotional labor, essentially. And, like, I read that as female, but, like, that doesn't have to necessarily be a female experience either. It's there's a lot of things you can personally take out of these characters, regardless very true to you, but I do think, having an extra layer of someone who can really speak from a character like this perspective would have probably helped in general.
And also, speaking of the way that she was leading the Apex, like, Simon and her were kind of set up to be like the mother-father, like, duo there. They're set up to, and like that was purposeful. But I think beyond that, beyond the specific way she deals with kids, like, I have seen a lot of media where men are good with kids. A lot of media where, like, it's like, there's media where they aren't, but I don't think that this is solely, like, in today, 2020, this isn't a solely feminine thing, and it shouldn't be. And I think that when we look at this, I still think she's cast in this position where she's the leader. She's the best. She's, like, has the highest number. She's the person you should look to. She's constantly trying to make sure she has pleased everybody and that she thinks she can do that.
Like, I do appreciate that they never, like, used her race is like a plot point that seems like a pretty rookie mistake. And they never she's a person, like let her be a person first and foremost. But that I'm clarifying, that does not mean that her race is irrelevant, because that colors her whole perspective and it's a part of who she is. So I feel like maybe in like being a little more nuanced with that could have added to this whole dynamic of her with Simon, because like I agree with you saying like the confidence you get from a certain amount of privilege is unmatched by to a point, just like the belief that things will just go your way and that there won't be serious consequences is a direct result of living with that privilege. And I mean, maybe it would have been interesting to see Grace navigate them more. But again, like, this is just not a thing white people should tackle alone. And I know they weren't completely alone, but
the reason is though, but I think I think they did recognize that they did acknowledge her blackness in the show, because they had this whole subplot about racism, which I feel was very not good looking back, where she had this where she's like, you're one of the good ones. And I'm just I know. Looking back on that specifically, that felt really bad. But again, I'm a white woman, and I can I don't have the full perspective here, but that from what I'm seeing, it feels like it's not acknowledging how much she understands that.
Yeah.
Okay.
How do we move on from here?
I think that was a very deep discussion on Simon's role in this show, and Grace. Just briefly, just random Simon stuff from that final sequence. There's this shot of the numbers surrounding his face as he's crying and maniacally laughing at the same time with lightning bolts.
It's a lot.
That's like an extra shot, right?
That's
there.
pretty extra.
But that's also playing into the idea that he is like they're giving him this beautiful shot that people are going to remember, and it's just kind of plays into what you were saying, Michelle.
That is the part I'm like most worried about showing, because like I had a really strong reaction to it when I was live watching, and I just kind of like broke down a little bit. I was like, I don't want to see these tears. Like I can't. I refuse to feel empathy for him at this point. Please stop trying to make me conflicted. Like, he's done so much harm. Like, please just let this end. Like, this is so like this is past the point of like thought-provoking, uncomfortable nuance, and it's going to a place that feels like you still want to make us see him as this complicated person when he chose his path. He's chosen his path at this point, and he just needs to accept the consequences, because otherwise, like, it just feels like every other news story we see all the time.
It does.
Yeah.
There's some reprising of the cult's imagery, partly with like the manipulation of the kids. Also, I noted the usage of the words like describing Grace as an infection, as a rot, is very very cult like. Actually, going back to what April was referring to with Horde Prime from She-Ra, that's very similar language. Cults are not good, guys.
Don't join cults.
He calls her like an it at one point. It's just like the lengths he goes to immediately dehumanize her and other her as soon as he believes in his mind that if she lied to him once, she's against him forever. It's just like so.
Well, the inventing of language, right? Like avoid, like you're just like needing to like find
so
some
disgusting
term to like
assign a title to it, almost like give it a name, but also like the fact that he knows the truth of everything, but at no point did I ever think that he believed it or accepted it, because like he's very much like convinced himself that that's what happened. Like, she is the void. Like, I made her the void, so therefore she is, kind of thing. So it's very there's not a lot lot of good qualities.
I think we agree on that. We have covered that. Yeah,
but I was very afraid, like, because they're just like, like even before it was explained and they kept calling her a void and everything like that, I was like, this is not good. Nothing good is gonna happen. Like very anxious for Grace.
But you know what? It all works out because we get to see his bones. So we talked a little bit at the beginning about this shot. Somebody called it Raiders of the Lost Ark. I saw a lot of reaction like, "Oh, how can they show this on TV and stuff?"
We had Capo last season. Capo was
skeletons are funny.
Skeletons are funny. Alex, did you really?
Skeleton is not funny.
Like you see his skull, it's fun.
Laugh. That's what I just learned today.
Funny?
Yeah, I laughed at that.
I disagree. I disagree a lot that it's funny.
If it's not plastic, I'm probably not gonna laugh at a skeleton.
Yeah.
If it's not a puppet.
Oh my god, puppet was scary.
The combination, like the melting, like flesh and eyeballs. Like
that must not smell good. You're right.
I was gonna say, like in my head, I was just like, oh god, that can't smell good. Like I can't even have that good. Like I was not in a good place during that moment. Like
there is the shot also of Grace like picking up like the sand that remains and crying over it. So.
She's making sure. Really real.
Doing the double tap in her own way.
Important.
So we are going a little bit long here, so just like quick hits around Gomes. Theories on Gomes. Let's go.
I like how you say that. Gomes.
Let's go.
Gomes.
Let's go.
Let's go. I feel like there's one obvious theory that's floating around, but let's see if any of you hit it. Maddie, you want us to talk Gomes earlier?
Yeah, I think I might have hit on the theory you're talking about, but I don't know which one exactly you were talking about. I think that these might be part of the life cycle of the train, and that maybe people that don't, like, they might either get reset or maybe even turn into denizens even. Like, that this seems to be part of the, like, I don't think the Gomes just straight up destroy people. Like, I think that there's something else going on here. But also, it could have just been like, whoa, Simon is so bad that I'm just going to explode and die now.
I was going to say, like, I had, like, a small theory. It's probably totally wrong and not correct in any way, shape, or form. But I remember thinking, like, oh, I wonder if they only truly go after, like, the worst off, like, people who have the higher numbers.
Yeah.
Specifically because one though, it almost sucked her out. Remember?
That's true. Because I was thinking about it like too, in a sense that like maybe they go after like those that they don't feel like are going to take anything away from the train, because then they're just like taking up space on this infinity train.
On this infinity train that we're all on.
Yeah, but because I mean, like, it went after. I mean, it went after both of them, which is true. They did have higher, and they do have much higher numbers. But like, it seemed to be like, all right, Simon, like, like, all right, and your neck numbers, like,
his face.
Yeah. April, I think, is close to the theory that I've been hearing, that like the Gomes are basically like the train's enforcers, where like if you're going so far against what the train is purposed for you, like those are sent out. Like even with Tulip, like those happen because she's like already off the train and they chase her back onto the train.
So they're monitors of the train. I honestly thought, just based on the fact that one exploded after that, because we saw the gun that can create Gomes. Amelia had it in the first book. I thought it was like maybe denizens that had accidentally been like transformed and they wanted to end their suffering, so they were finding any passengers so they could finally die because they hated being cockroach dogs. But I like your theory. It's more involved.
Yeah. I think I don't know. I don't know like if it exploding was on purpose or not. It could have just been a side effect because like
Simon tasted so bad.
Yeah, because Simon tasted so bad.
So bad that they needed to explode and die.
I mean, I would.
April would explode if
I ate Simon, I would die.
Yeah.
Or yes. melted him.
I was seeing some wish fulfillment out there that it was either Tuba or their daughter.
Aww.
I like that. Revenge.
I mean, like, I don't know if I want to comment on that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there.
No, I know you are. I'm not blaming
Yeah.
you, Alex. I'm just saying I'm fine just moving on from that.
Yeah. So Hazel, she yeets out of there pretty quickly. At
Did you
the
say she
beginning of the-
eats out of there?
that train car, it lifts and then it goes whoosh.
I'm not
backwards.
disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying I just want
That was
to
her own
acknowledge you said
choice. It was a choiceful yeet on her own part.
Yeah,
and a voluntary yeet.
Amelia yeeted the car herself.
yes, you did.
Hazel, painful goodbye. She also gets a little bit of episode 9. Hazel is still precious. Her not too much new here, but Hazel's cool.
I'm just
I was
happy
really-
she actually chose to leave.
Yeah, I was so, because I remember, Maddie, I think you were the one that was the most just like bothered by the fact that Grace, like, when it came down to the truth being revealed, Grace did kind of like, in her way, she was trying to protect Hazel, but she hurt Hazel in the process. And I love that this has come back immediately. And now Hazel's like, look, you've broken my trust. Like, this is a consequence. We may never see each other again because, like, you decided to do this and, like, nothing's going to be the same between us. And for her to have, like, the choice and dignity to, like, do that, I'm just like, that was a really great
was really
decision
good.
on
Yeah.
Hazel's
Also,
part.
again, you saying that, like, Grace had to face that. Like, she had to face that she made
she
that
had to
decision.
face that.
It again, not to go into the whole conversation, it again contrasts her with Simon that, like, she was shown her mistake and she faced it and decided, yes, I did make a mistake instead of what Simon did.
Yeah.
It's so impressive. Just seeing her battle all of her worst fears,
Yeah.
literally saying them at herself. Like, that is so hard. And the fact that she was able to just get through that is a testament to her strength of will,
Yeah.
It really is.
Mm-hmm. And as we talk about Hazel and Amelia, we begin to think about what could be next season, right? Just to briefly summarize what we know about Infinity Train, the current public stance of Owen Dennis, the showrunner, is that it's at risk of not being renewed. He's talked about his contract running out in a couple months. At the same time, he has liked tweets positing that Book 4 exists, and what's
Alex.
in question is 5 and 6.
He has, though.
You stirring the pot.
Yeah,
I'll-
quit stirring that pot.
It's okay.
Also, it appears there is some information from an animation studio describing a season 2 as 20 episodes. So that's additional information that's out there.
I mean, it does feel like this is setting up a lot of stuff, like not just with Grace and everything. Like, there's a lot of things that are left open.
Right. So, like, with working under the assumption that there is a book 4 that's going to happen, what do you guys feel like you'd be excited for, based on what we know, Maddie?
I want to see more of. I think I want a season that just doesn't actually focus on people trying to leave the train or focus on what the train is for. I want to see, not necessarily Amelia. I kind of want to just focus on, like, denizens of the train and just see what exactly the train is trying to do, because it can't be just this thing that's trying to help people. That just doesn't make sense in my brain, that would be why this was made. It feels like there's more going on, and I actually want to dig into that, because we've delved a lot into what the train is trying to do for these people, and I kind of just want to delve into, like, what the train's trying to do for itself.
Yes.
Because it's interesting, because book 3 actually, like, it's got the least train lore of any of these seasons so far, right? Like, we kind of took a break from all that. So if we want to go back to that, that's one possibility. April, do you have any book 4 hopes and dreams?
I think that I like the idea of just getting more into, like, the train. And I think it would be, I guess, interesting to do that through Amelia and Hazel, just because we're kind of getting like an actual, like, human, as well as, like, Hazel. And so more Hazel, give me her. But I think that would be, like, an interesting way to go about it. I don't really know, like, what a 4th book would, or a fourth season would truly look like, because they did leave so much to explore still, and it could go in any way. Like, I liked how there was, each season has kind of crossed over from the previous, and so we could continue to follow Grace, but I think that more justice would be served if we followed Hazel, because we already know that Grace is on the right path. And even though she didn't get off the train, she's not going to go backwards. And so I think that that's like where we leave her. And so we just move on with the next, person that we've encountered. So ideally it would be Amelia and Hazel. And I think that would also be kind of fun too, to have like the 1-1 Amelia like interactions, as well as, throwing in like figuring out Hazel and all of that stuff. So I think that would make for a really interesting season 4, instead of like, we've got a person on the train, like, what are we doing with them? Like, I think it would be like a good way to mix it up.
I think we've moved past that plot at this point.
Yeah. Well, because we've kind of done all that we could do with it without it getting like monotonous and everything like that. Like, we had an actual human die. We've had, people get off the train. We have people who are still on the train, but we know they're doing the right things now and heading in the right direction. And, so we've hit all of those strides. And so I think that like the best, because I agree with Maddie that I think it would be really good to see like someone who's not trying to get off the train. Amelia's not trying to get off the train. Yeah. She's just trying to fix the train. And then I think we could really get into like train lore at that point as well.
Ideally, I was thinking that following Amelia would make a lot of sense, just because she has such a different relationship to the train than everyone else. Yeah. But it seems like, based on Owen's tweet about how if he could have a movie would feature Amelia, that seems to imply that she isn't plans for book 4. And if that's true, I would like to see a character who's ready to confront the train head on and get some clarity about the train, not because I'm train fan number 1 over here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know
it just feels like it's time, because otherwise, we can't ever go back to a simple someone gets on, learns a lesson. And I think the show knows that, so it stands to reason what's the last thing to really tackle here, and it feels like it's the train itself. I don't know if that's really where they plan to go yet, because if you tackle the train, then I feel like there's the issue of how do you then top that? The train is the ultimate thing in Infinity Train, and so that might, if you want 8 seasons, I don't think you can tackle the train in book 4. But ideally, for what seems like a natural progression, I would hope maybe they could manage to do that at some point, because it's honestly what I want right now.
Yeah, I'll just say that I would, whether it's Amelia or Hazel or a new character, I'm just in the mood for something a little more uplifting.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Book 3 was a grind, it's great, but
it was taxing.
Yeah. So and just brief as we begin wrapping up here, we can talk about where we're ranking the seasons. I think I still have book 2 highest, just because I feel like that journey was a lot more relatable and at the same time it does feel like a more satisfying ending to that book compared to 3. I think I'd do 2, 1, 3, but 3 is still good. But just this is just I think I said in the first podcast this was going to be an uphill climb no matter what, because you're starting from unsympathetic characters from the previous season. That's I think Michelle mentioned in the opening thoughts, this is a challenge you're putting on yourself to work that into something satisfying. They got some of the way there, but definitely it was a challenge. So I go 2, 1, 3 right now. Maddie, do you have a ranking?
2 is just kind of transcendent for me. It's
yeah.
Lake is just, I don't know. I think Grace and Simon are really interesting, and I think Grace is really interesting. I think the season's really interesting. It hits me hard in a lot of ways, but Lake's season is so the storytelling is so economical and so clear, and just every episode of that season works towards Lake becoming Lake, and it's just so gorgeous and beautiful. Like, I think there's one episode in the middle, I forget which one it is, but that Lake's is just a little more fillery, but otherwise Lake's season is just so, the moment when she's looking at her own reflection in the water is just so cathartic for me. I don't think I could ever top that in this show.
You can definitely go back to our Book 2 Identity podcast where we dive more deeper in depth into that. If you want to hear our deeper, like a lake.
Deeper,
Michelle,
deep as a lake.
Michelle, do you want to give your season rankings?
I mean, I agree that season 2, I think, is my favorite just because it felt like it's the one I most personally was impressed by, and I think was, like, for as ambitious as it was, I think it culminated in such a jaw-droppingly stellar way. I think that really makes it stand out for me. I feel like overall the book 3 was the most ambitious, but I think because of some of that, it was harder to handle everything, and I'm not sure. Like, I'd give them maybe like an 85%. Is that pretty generous? I'm gonna give them an 85. Solid B effort, especially considering like how much they really wanted to get into and how freaking hard that is, and how little of TV is even trying to touch that stuff. Let's be real. Like, A for effort, B for execution, I guess.
A for concept, B for execution.
Like, book 1, I think, like, it's more simple, but it was the first one. It was, like, the first of anything, so I think it makes sense that it was a lot more straightforward. So I think I'd agree with Alex that it's, like, book 2 is, like, such a gold standard of both concept and execution. Book 1's just very straightforward and strong, and book 3 has a lot of really high points and a lot of lower points, and that puts it a little lower down on my list for that reason.
Okay. April?
I'm going to go par for the course and say that book 2 is definitely, like, the highest. I don't think I really need to say much more. You've said everything that I could say about book 2. As far as book 3 and book 1, I kind of put them on the same plane just because I do recognize how ambitious, like, this book 3 was and how this entire season has been. It's been very, again, ambitious is the word. The execution, considering the amount that they put on their plate, has I mean, I can't, like, I would have expected less for what they were trying to accomplish. And so I definitely want to give them credit for this season. And book 1 is just so, like, I guess, like, I don't know. I really connected with book 1 as well. And so I think that, like what they set up in that season has only made, like, book 2 and book 3, like, possible, because if we didn't, then we would have to go through all of this, like, juxtaposition and everything like that. And so I'm grateful for that season.
I just want to say, because I think we've been a little down on season 3 here at the end. I will say that there's some episodes here that are just absolutely incredible. Like, the season,
like, so many
the funeral episode is just still
like, I have problems with, like, book 3, but I still think that, like, it's a very good season. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like throwing a wrench in everything, but it's doing so in such a beautiful day. Oh, a beautiful way.
Beautiful day.
So,
beautiful day on this train.
But so, like, I think that, like, you know, like, it looked good. The animation was very, like, smooth. The music, like, very played into, like, the drama of what was going on, and, like, it was overall a good season. Like, I don't think there's a bad season of Infinity Train. So
yeah, definitely not. I mean, and again, like, applause for so much they did manage to accomplish. It's such stunning work, and I can't imagine, like, how any of this came to be. Like, it really does blow my mind every time. And I do still want to see more. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is one of the funnest shows to talk about, period. And we watch a lot of stuff. It would be so great to get to see all that they have for us in book 4, if book 4 is a thing.
It's not only like a fun show, but like I like that they're willing to go to deep and dark and scary places.
Yeah.
Like especially because like this is a show made for like, you know, like teens, tweens, and so they don't get a lot in terms of animation. It seems like animation is very much divided into like kids and then adults, and so
it's a very untapped market for teens.
It's super untapped, and I think that like this is the best way to tap into it, because it's relatable to teens, like all of the like leads are teenagers, and so they have very like relatable problems, and I think that that's great. Like they're definitely like making headway into this market. And I love it.
It's great. It honestly is great.
Yeah. I think that will do it for us here.
Alex, wait.
Animated.
Wait, okay. I know I said a lot of times I was done with hot takes about the train. I promise after this last one, I'm done for real. No more for me.
One last one.
Okay. So I screen capped this because my jaw dropped and I wanted to scream so loud, but I have a cat, so I didn't. So there's a part where Grace at the very end of the last episode, she's like going down the escalator and she's talking to the kids about how everything's going to be different and there's going to be no more Apex. And she says, like, there can't be more Apex because, like, it's unfair for me to tell you how to understand yourself. It's like, that is literally the entire problem with the train. Like, how is no one...
Yeah. I think that it's a little too hands-off.
Like, this, like, I don't care if you think that train is neutral. I don't care if you think it's just a machine. It is not fair for the train to tell you how to understand yourself and to assume that it knows what's best for you and how to deal with your problems. Like, okay, I'm done. No more.
I have more to say, but I'll keep my teeth. I won't keep my teeth.
Yeah, look, I think...
Like, I was like,
let's put this out there.
Okay.
If you've somehow listened through the 1 hour and change that this podcast has gone, and you want to hear more discussion on train lore, please leave a comment below requesting that, and we can look into maybe having a second discussion, because I do think that book 3 kind of ends with like the train making its judgments after all on both Simon and Grace, like pretty stunningly. But like we can get into that more in a different discussion. Until then, you can find info on this podcast at OverlyAnimated.com. You can find all our previous discussions on Infinity Train. You can also find Michelle will have a reaction video. You've heard a lot of her reactions here, but I'm sure there's some different stuff as she's watching the episode. So you can find that on our YouTube account as well, overlyanimated.com/YouTube. We have a lot of discussion going on our Discord, as was referenced earlier in this podcast. So if you want to check that out, you can do that at overlyanimated.com/Discord. If you want to share with us about Infinity Train or any other animated show out there. Again, if you've listened to us this long, it's likely that you like hearing us. And if that's the case, we would appreciate any financial support you want to give us. So you can do that at Patreon, at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to all of our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Bob, who I'm pretty sure listened to this. So
yeah, Bob! Our champ, Bob!
Thank you, Bob. And thanks to our Patreon executive producers, Ryan, Steve, Beatrice, Hugh, Michael, Needle, and Phonician. Like we said, Infinity Train, other podcasts, who knows, depending on how much traffic this gets, and if we get comments requesting something in particular, we can always consider it. Otherwise, other shows that are out there, we've covered the Owl House pretty frequently. Amphibia, we have a podcast out there. You can go back to listen to other deep shows that we've discussed in the past, like BoJack Horseman, She-Ra, Undone. Like, if you like this kind of conversation, we've had this with other shows as well, and you can dig through our archives for that as well.
Or if you want something that's truly off the rails, go check out the Ladybug podcast.
Yeah, it's off the rails.
Yes.
They also go into deep breakdowns of the psyches of the different characters on those podcasts as well. So go look that up. But yeah, thanks for riding this train for us. We have arrived at the terminal. I haven't made train puns up to now, so here they are.
Oh, I hate you.
Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you later. Goodbye.
Bye.